Good afternoon and good morning and good evening. And so distinguished panelists, also our viewers online and all our think tank scholars and also our media friends here also at the CCG. So this is a global think tank online forum on international cooperation to combat COVID-19. This is actually the forum for global cooperation to fight COVID-19 challenges and opportunities. So we are very fortunate to have all of you here this afternoon. And this CCG-organized webinar is one of the 4 online forum that actually composed of this global think tank online forum on international cooperation to combat COVID-19. It's co-hosted by the Center for China and Globalization and also Academy of Contemporary of China and World Studies, Chinese Academy of Social Science, China Center for International Economic Exchanges, Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, Renmin University, and also British East Asia Council, Center for European Policy Studies, Human Science Research and the Council of South Africa, Latin American Council of Social Science, and the Russia International Affairs Council. So the forum brings together actually over 160 government officials and also think tank scholars, international organizations representatives from China and around the world to share their insights and perspective on the theme of enhancing global cooperation to combat COVID-19 and building a global community of the shared interest of shared fight and shared future. As a matter of fact, we had an opening ceremony took place last night. Yesterday, we also featured remarks by current and also former government leaders from China, Japan, Kyrgyzstan, Australia, Croatia, Slovenia, Egypt, and international organizations, current and former representative from the United Nations, WTO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and also think tank scholars and experts from around different countries. So we're actually now facing this COVID-19. It's very serious situation now. As a matter of fact, as of Monday this week, UN's General Secretary President stated that solidarity is the world's best line of defense. And also we had June 8th also this week, World Bank just released the June 2020 Global Economic Prospect. And the baseline forecast that envisioned a 5.2% contraction in global GDP decline in 2020. So that's unprecedented, quite alarming. The pandemic expected to plunge most of the countries into recession in 2020, with per capita income contracting in the largest fraction of countries globally since 1817. So advanced economy are projected to shrink 7%. So the developed countries actually also has more impact. And the emerging market and developing economy will facing a contract by 2.5%, probably even more. So as they cope with their own domestic outbreaks of the virus. And we also, currently, we already had, according to the, the statistic, we already have actually about 7.3 million cases of infections worldwide, and over 400,000 deaths, fatalities in over 200 countries and regions around the world. So this is really a very serious situation, very tough situation. And that's why we are having this joint international think tank forum to get all the ideas, wisdom, and the recommendations from all of you. And as a matter of fact, also on the June 8th, the WHO chief, Tedros, actually made a regular briefing, and he said more than 6 months into this pandemic, this is not the time for any country to take its foot off the pedal. This is the time for countries to continue to work hard and also to, on the basis of science, solutions, and solidarity. So this is really a very crucial time that this international online webinar on think tank community how to combat the COVID-19, and so it's really we are featuring most impressive ideas and suggestions from all the over 160 experts around the world. So how can countries continue in this battle against the humanity's common enemy, COVID-19, and also in the socio-economic well-being of the government across the world? How we can work together for the life and the public health. The coronavirus is posing a grievous threat to the livelihood of the mankind, and how we can really work on that together. Also, as we said from the World Bank forecast, that the economy is facing devastating impact, and how can we really work this crisis out in this highly connected world. And so topic of discussion, giving our think tanks scholar regional, national, and organizational perspective, we are really asking a broad range of questions. What are the broader challenges and opportunities facing the international community with respect of fighting COVID-19 pandemics? And how shall those challenges be overcome or opportunities seized, given this, also our different background of our scholars and the think tanks? And also any specific proposal you could think or make in terms of enhancing the role of our humanity community in helping strike a global response to the coronavirus threats. And we are really very delighted that we are joined by 12 distinguished speakers representing international organizations, regional think tanks, NGOs, from Germany, United Kingdom, India, African, Asia, and the United States. We're also today actually at this CCG meeting room, boardroom. We are also delighted to have the strong press presence today from China's top media outlets, from CCTV, Xinhua News Agency, China Daily, Global Times, China News Agency, and the People's Daily, and so on. And also we are joined by scholars and researchers from think tank of CCG. And I'd like to also, before we start, I would like to introduce our distinguished panels today. And we first will have, of course, a congratulatory address by Michela Calacci, the former Undersecretary of State at the Italian Ministry of Economic Development. And actually, speaker we are having today in alphabetic order is that we have, of course, very fortunate today. We have Sir Danny Alexander, who is the Vice President and the Corporate Secretary, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. And also we have Ulrich Braun, Founding Director, Center for Economics of Materials from Germany. And we have Lawrence Braun, Founding Director, Himalaya Consensus Institute, based in Nepal. And we have Stuart Croft, Vice Chancellor and President of University of Warwick University. And we have Yuya Hasegawa, is the Managing Director, Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO. And we also have Hongbo Ji, he's the China Country Director, the Asian Foundation of US. And also we have Emmanuel Patricia, is the President of Asia Institute, based in US. And we also have Anushak Prasad, Founding Director of China-India Foundation. And we also have Hanaya Ryder, CEO Development Reimagine, based in Africa. And also we have Francisco Trigo, who is the Vice Provost for International Affairs, National Autonomous University of Mexico. And we have Tansir Michael Ye, he's the President of Kingsley Strategic Institute, based in Malaysia. So we'll really have a very great panel of this high-level webinar that CCG is very pleased to co-host. So the format is like this. We'll have first we have the congratulatory message by Michela Calacci. So he's going to deliver a very brief opening message, and then we have a speaker's statement. We strictly stick to 3 minutes each, and then we will have a Q&A. So this probably will last about 40 minutes, and then we have a Q&A section, half hour. So we have a journalist presented today, and then also the discussion that we will ask our panelists to have a chance to answer the Q&A, the questions, and then we have a final 2 or 3 minutes of wrap up. So I'm very pleased to welcome all of you, and also welcome our media friends, our scholars, and then this is really a great seminar, webinar that we're hosting. We're actually, CCG is hosting 2 webinars. Actually, we have one this afternoon. We have another one tonight. So probably being hosted the most scholars persons. Now I'd like to start. So why don't we actually start with Nicola Calacci. He's the former Undersecretary of State at the Italian Ministry of Economic Development. Nicola, why don't you start?
Thank you very much. Thank you, President Wang. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here on this event. Thank you to you and all the friends at CCG. A couple of minutes, really. This is really the type of events, activities, forum that are needed in this time of perceived difficulties around the world. And so this is a most welcome opportunity. So thank you for organizing it and for reminding us. I want to say that I think since the beginning of the coronavirus crisis, there was a misunderstanding that health and economic issues were in conflict with each other. And so even we here in Italy, in the government and other governments around Europe, we were trying to find a balance between what should we look after first, health or economy. But really, I do believe that those 2 goals are not in conflict with each other. And the example that Asian countries and China has given us does show that a proper lockdown done well early maybe is also in the right direction of helping the economy. You take a hit at the beginning, limited in time, and then you're ready to restart. And perhaps this is a mistake that we have done in Europe, that we are dragging the lockdown for longer periods of time, and so the economy suffer more. So we actually did the opposite, a weak lockdown and a weak economic recovery. I do really think that really countries need, this is, we always say there is not a crisis without an opportunity, but really it would be a real waste not to use this as an opportunity to have countries cooperate with each other much more. And in order to cooperate, I am a supporter of what I call it a reverse pyramid, bottom-up approach. Let the people-to-people relationship grow, scientists, academics, researcher, and these will feed up to governments, because governments in a way need to first have the support of the public opinion before they take actions. So we are in a strange institutional system. The government run the country, but they really do not lead. They are mostly led by what the people want. So in order to allow governments to lower the tone, lower the tensions, I think we first need to build the support at the lower level. And so as a professor, as a researcher, I do welcome these activities that would actually bring people, exchanges, students, along all layers of the society. And indeed, as you probably know, I was one of the proponents of Italy joining the Belt and Road Initiative last year when President Xi came to visit us in Rome. And this Belt and Road for me was not just a trade, but was also a cultural road. So we have added the road of culture. Now we have added the road of health, so that we expanded the cooperation amongst all countries in the world, not just for trade, but along all layers. Because when we have strong cultural layers, then trade flourishes better. So I think this Belt and Road could be one example, not the only one, but surely one example that could be put to use to lower the frictions between countries. One and last point is that we in the West, we are trying to understand where to put now the line between the role of the state and the role of the market. If we need to move it more so that the government becomes a little bit stronger with a bigger role in the society and the economy, or if it should be the market to fix the situation. Now, when the government role expands, some people misunderstanding. This does not mean more protectionism. It does not mean more nationalist. In my view, this, if done well, means that a stronger government can offer its citizens a safe, comfortable base, so that they feel safe, they feel protected by the government, they see that their economy does a little bit better, they see that there is a strong management at the top, and therefore they are more open to engage with the international partners. So this is the positive view that I want to launch. A stronger government to make the domestic society and economy stronger would push people to look more outward. So it is not a protectionist trend, but it's actually the opposite, try to bring back a globalization. So really a bigger state of the role may actually help to bring the world closer than ever. And this is really what we need now. I thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing all the other remarks. Many thanks. 谢谢你.
Thank you, Nicola. Yeah, I think that you have made some very interesting point as well. Of course, thank Italy for participating in the Belt and Road Initiative, but I think that you mentioned about the government role. I think that through this crisis, we have seen if government can proact and really take a more active role, then maybe the situation will be better under control. So we need both whole society approach, but also we need government to really step in to make all the right decisions. So that's a very good point. Now we want to hear also a friend from international organizations. So why don't we have Sir Daniel Alexander, who is the Vice President and the Corporate Secretary of Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, to talk from your perspective, from a financial, international financial institutions perspective.
Thank you, Wang Huio, and thank you very much indeed to the CCG for organizing this event and creating this opportunity for people to engage with one another on this most important topic. And I think that the point that you stressed in your introduction about the severity of the economic effects of the crisis, in addition to the severity of the health effects of the crisis, is really a very important point. We saw the World Bank report earlier this week, which was highlighting the depth of the macroeconomic impacts. I was the Chief Secretary to the Treasury in the UK between 2010 and 2015, when we were dealing with the after effects of the 2008-2009 financial crisis. And if anything, the economic impact, the numbers we're seeing or being forecast now are even more severe than the numbers that we saw then. And so governments will have, in addition to the immediate health task, they will have very challenging circumstances for some time to come to restart their economies and then to deal with the economic consequences thereof. I want to stress in my remarks the importance of international institutions as being places to encourage and develop international cooperation in response to this crisis. International institutions, which are the basis of and formed through multilateral cooperation between many countries, have a crucial role to play themselves in both supporting the short-term relief from the crisis and also the longer-term recovery. And furthermore, there is also a crucial role for international institutions to play working together to develop a coordinated international response to the issues that we're seeing, particularly the issues in the developing world, where the domestic resources are not sufficient to be able to put in place the measures to support support people who are facing hardship, to support companies, and to support a longer-term economic recovery. In the case of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is a multilateral development bank formed 4.5 years ago in early 2016, now with 102 approved members from every part of the world, we see a major role for ourselves in supporting our members to meet the financial pressures that they're under in response to the crisis. We've established a crisis response facility, which has set aside up to $10 billion initially, and could be more if that's what is needed, to support member countries in investing in their healthcare systems, supporting their budgets, and providing liquidity support to financial institutions in member countries, and especially in low and middle income countries in Asia, where the needs are really critical. We've approved already finance to countries like the Philippines, Georgia, Bangladesh, India. We provided a loan to China for strengthening the Center for Disease Control system in Beijing and Chongqing. And those actions have been with the strong support of all of the members of the AIIB, from Asia, from Europe, and from other parts of the world. And we've also seen in this crisis, I think, close cooperation between multilateral institutions. We're working closely with the World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, co-financing support projects, regular engagement between senior figures in these institutions. I've been speaking to my counterparts on a regular basis to try and make sure that within the mandates that each institution has, we're all playing our proper role to ensure that in total, the member countries have access to the different types of support that they will need in that situation. But I'd also make one final point. I suspect I've already exceeded my 3 minutes, which is that while it's important to focus on the immediate crisis response, it's also important to focus on the longer term economic needs. So the AIIB has been set up to finance infrastructure projects that can help enhance the sustainable economic development of the Asia region and indeed beyond. And that kind of investment is going to be even more needed after this crisis, because it's critical to developing the kind of economic recovery that our members will need in the years to come, whether that's connectivity, infrastructure that helps to tackle climate change, which is another massive challenge that we all have to deal with. In those areas, we have to focus on the crisis, but we also have to continue to work on the longer term economic needs of low and middle income countries around the world. And so with that, I'd like to conclude again by thanking you for convening this excellent forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Excellent remark. I think it's very important that international organizations like AIIB and other, yeah, okay, sorry. So, yeah, I hope you can hear me. And so it's very important that you need to really, I think the international organizations like AIIB can play a very important role, and also other international organizations like we see WHO and things like that. So in a crisis like this, we will see more important role and strengthen the international organizations rather than weakening. So I think we really see that there's a need for more active international organization role. So thank you for your comment. Now we'd like to move on, and why don't we invite Mr. Ulrich Braun, the founding director of the Center for Economics and Materials from Germany, to have your 3-minute statement. Ulrich, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Well, I will start with to mention that globalization has been a driver of prosperity over the last 30 years. And we should never forget about that it freed many, many people from poverty. But of course, nothing is without risk. And think COVID-19 came with the mortality rates of MERS from Middle East respiratory syndrome, then we would have a completely different condition. So what we need basically is a robust world within some sort of an economic and political order that is more stable. Chinese would say we need more Tianyang. I think that's the expression Tianyang that you use. So we have a completely new geo-economic situation. The global value chains are under stress. What we have experienced is non-availability of resources that is rather rare in markets. And this means that the system is collapsing. Single sourcing will be paved out. I think we think that average German inventories will go up in industry to 2 months, which will be considerable in the long run. This is embedded in the US-China trade conflict. And of course, it is embedded, as I said, in a situation with COVID-19 that has accelerated the situation. So the second point would be next to global value chains, the question, how do we tackle information? And I think we have a very, very big information problem. We started with that, and we have improved considerably. And it was already mentioned that governments didn't play a very productive role in the beginning. I think if I go to Germany, because that's where my knowledge is quite high, we had been very well theoretically prepared. We ran a scenario in 2013 with government on a sort of SARS epidemic in the world. We ran, that is in 2013, we ran an influenza scenario in 2013 with 65 million dead around the world within 2 years with an influenza type a virus that emerged from some swine farm in South America. We had the Johns Hopkins simulation of event 201, and we had finally, we could see what happened in China in the beginning of January 2020. And our government had a complete lack of understanding how terrible the situation was going to be develop. There were people who sold medical equipment to China and to Asia in early February that told the Minister of Health that there is something dramatic developing. He said, well, we're going to control that. We were able to control it in Germany because we had enough beds, we had a good, well-managed shutdown, etc. So we are pretty low now. We have, I think, presently some 6,000 infections in Germany that are under control. So what we have to do is increase informational robustness, and at the same time, we have to increase economic robustness without rolling back globalization. I think the post-crisis exchange of information was quite well organized, and as I said, much better than pre-crisis. And we must sort of look that we do not create too much economic patriotism that reduces globalization. We must assure deliveries. We must improve our contracts internationally. We must, in my opinion, strengthen WTO and of course other instruments like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, etc. And we must look that as this crisis is developing in waves through the world, that we have not permanent disruptions in the world trade flows, because it's not synchronous, it's completely dysynchronous. We don't know how it develops in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ulrich. I think that you made an excellent point. I think globalization should not be retreat, and globalization should be continue, and then particularly to continue the global value chain and then support the globalization going forward. Not stopped by this COVID-19. So it's absolutely important that we have inclusive and balanced globalization that we need really to push forward. Thank you for your comment. So that's a really good perspective as well. Now I'd like to invite Lawrence Brown, and he's the founding director, Himalaya Consensus Institute, but also he's a senior fellow from Center for China and Globalization. So maybe Lawrence, you can speak now if you are there. Yeah, thank you. Unlock your speaker.
Can you hear me now, President Wang?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate what the other speakers have noted, particularly the comments about China's leadership in combating coronavirus. I have watched this entire, from here in Beijing, entire process. And I must say that China took leadership. Initially, we didn't know what this thing was. We thought it was SARS. We didn't understand it. It took time to understand the danger and potency of this coronavirus. Once it was understood, the government acted with lightning speed, adapting all kinds of quarantine measures, using big data and technology, but also using traditional medicine. And I think what is not understood throughout the world is how people here rally together to cooperate in the common cause of saving lives. And I think that was the priority for everyone. And from what we can see, there's the entire coronavirus as it spread through China, the entire process. Maybe you had less than 4,000 deaths. You have more than that in major cities in America today on a daily basis. And we have to ask why. And I think it's very important that the value system in China was very much behind the fight. You had traditional values of Confucianism, which actually brought people together in collaboration rather than fighting. There was no politicization of this. It was collaborative. You have a Taoist element, which allowed people to recognize the need for immediate change and responsiveness to change. And of course, you have a Buddhist element, which values all life equally. And I think these principles have not been understood in the outside world as being guiding principles within China that allowed the government to work in very close collaboration with the whole population. I've never seen such unity anywhere in achieving something as strong as combating this virus. This virus is the alien, it's like a Star Wars movie. It is the alien we're fighting. And I think that there's need for more of this type of spirit internationally. Right now we have in the United States, this has become totally politicized. It's become a political issue between those who want to wear face masks and those who don't, those who want to quarantine. And I think really we have to rise above this and have more collaboration internationally, not only for this pandemic, but for the next one and the next crisis. And this also, these same lessons apply to change. We have fires in California now. We have all kinds of, just had a huge typhoon in India. We are facing enormous distortions of environment and distortions of health. And this is a time when we need to share these experiences and learn from each other rather than to have this decoupling of globalization. Now is a time for globalization in terms of healthcare, in terms of environment, and in terms of utilizing the technology intelligently for this purpose. Lastly, what I'd like to say is I'd like to compliment the Chinese leadership on taking the view that every single life is important, because that's not the view that's been taken in some countries, where even they have a godlike selection of who should live and who should die based on their contribution to the capital market, primarily who can click their computer the most to create the stock prices go up on the so-called big tech. And you have right now a complete distortion with the capital market in the United States going up to unprecedented levels, but you have enormous levels of coronavirus death, and you've got people protesting all over the country against systemic injustice. From that perspective, there is a dislocation taking place, and that is all being achieved through manipulation of quantitative easing, what they call today repo. So we asked, the earlier comment of one of the guests was, speakers was about what the role of state versus market. This is not a market. This is all state intervention. It's state intervention using debt to create enormous, unprecedented liquidity, which has no place to go except to pump up prices. And the real economy that affects people who are protesting the street across the United States is being hurt because of a capital market manipulation for the few. And I think now from this entire pandemic, we have so many lessons to learn about the importance of protecting every single life, not only from the perspective of health, but also environment. And that means getting back into real economics that actually support people's lives on a sustainable and continuous basis from the point of view of environment and healthcare, and not only the few and their capital market interests. Thank you for your time and letting me speak.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. And you have also raised the quite good points. You know, the how we can fight this collectively. You know, the community spirit. You know, the value system. That all play some role, but also economically, how we can stimulate the economy, and how we can really put the resources where it's the most needed. That can really help to situation. So those are good points. Thank you for that. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Yuya Hasagawa. He's the Managing Director, Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, in Hong Kong, but probably based. Yeah. So Yuya, it's your turn, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, President Wang. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak here today. I just want to mention the two things that are key elements for encouraging the global cooperation. The first is the interdependence. The second is the trust. Let me start with my first point, the interdependence. In order to encourage the global cooperation, we need to minimize the negative impact of the interdependence. Each country deeply dependent on each other. Of course, there's a negative impact of a positive impact of interdependence. For example, COVID-19 pandemic or interdependence of a goods trade, they happen economic impact on supply chain. So that's why you can see the movement for the diversification of the supply chain or the movement towards protectionism of trade. However, but there's a limitation of this kind of movement. It's impossible to completely decouple the linkage of the world. Therefore, we need to focus on minimizing the negative impact of interdependence rather than focusing on decoupling the linkage of the world. So one of the specific solutions is to make use of international regimes such as international institutions, which try to mitigate the negative impact of the interdependence and try to maximize the positive impact of the interdependence. In that sense, the WHO or WTO, such kind of the international institutions is a really important mechanism to encourage the global cooperation. The second thing is trust. In order to encourage the global cooperation, we need to build a trust. The biggest change due to COVID-19 pandemic is the use of online communication. To tell the truth, I believe the best way of communicating with people is the face-to-face communication. But you can understand the perfectly what the people say. But on the other hand, the online communication has a limitation. Sometimes the misunderstanding or dissatisfaction could be embedded from the conversation of the online because of the imperfect characteristic of online communication. But however, if online communication becomes commonly used as the new normal, then we need to be ready for this new situation. So that is, we need to building a trust with people who you have to communicate with. Building a trust will minimize the negative impact of online communication, such as avoiding this misunderstanding or dissatisfaction. The trust can be built by taking a daily sincere attitude or daily sincere actions. The building trust will be the key factor to determine the reputation of the individual or nations under the post-coronavirus situation. So that's also contribute to the global cooperation. So in this way, so it's really, in order to encourage global cooperation, it's fundamentally important minimize negative impact of independence, and important to build a trust among the people and the nations. Thank you very much, President.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Asagawa. Yeah, I think you have made a really excellent point that the interdependency among all the countries and among all the organizations and the business communities are really vital to continue. And yet, it's also very important to build up the trust, as you outlined, that we have probably better communications through the online communication, but then the trust is decreasing. So we need more trust building, and that's starting from daily activities, as you rightly said. So I think that's really a very good recommendation. So thank you for your suggestion, and it's very, very useful, I think. Now I'd like to invite Madame Ji. She's the country representative of Asian Foundation, which is based in US, and then she is representing the foundation in China. So on board, please.
Thank you, President Wang. I'm really happy to be on this very distinguished panel to talk about these very important issues surrounding international cooperation. And I would like to highlight the role of Chinese private sector and Chinese civil society in global cooperation. So in the fight against COVID-19 in China in the past few months, we have all witnessed that Chinese enterprises, civil society organizations, and volunteers played very important roles and made great contributions. Now, when we look at Chinese international assistance on COVID-19, well, the Chinese government has described its global response as the most intensive and wide-ranging emergency humanitarian operation since the founding of the country in 1949. We also see that a very large amount of the global response effort has been contributed by non-governmental channels. So, for example, RWR, a Washington, D.C.-based research and consultancy firm, tracked China's COVID-19 outreach between March and early May. Their data shows that approximately half of the announced donations have been provided through corporations, rather than government agencies or philanthropic organizations. Note that research counts the number of unique donations, not the number of PPE items or the value assigned to them. A unique donation considered under the research is an assistance package delivered to a specific country. But still, Chinese companies that have given multiple COVID-19 related donations tend to be those involved in construction, travel, energy, technology. RWR data shows that China Railway Construction Corporation, for example, is the company that has been most active in China's COVID-19 international response. Since March 1st, CRCC has made at least 60 international donations. The most visible Chinese private sector donations are probably Jack Ma's plane loads of masks and PPEs, which I'll talk about under civil society because his donations were made through the Jack Ma Foundation and Alibaba Foundation. So the two foundations donated medical supplies to more than 100 countries, including all countries on the African continent, shared diagnostic manuals in multiple languages on the internet and social media, launched an online real-time exchange platform for frontline public health workers. Jack Ma himself opened an account on Twitter for the first time to disseminate the information. So they started very early on, had very high international visibility, and the donations reached a wide range of countries. Much less well-known examples would include the China Foundation for Poverty Alleviation, one of a very few Chinese NGOs with offices in partner countries. It is a little slow in starting as CFPA has recognized the difficulties and challenges for them to be involved in such a public health emergency. But its programs that started in late March and mainly focused on repurposing existing programs, like installing hand washing stations in Nepal, changing its food support programs that used to run at schools for kids to food distribution to families. And there are also a huge amount of very grassroots Chinese civil society organizations like alumni organizations, community groups who are very much involved in donation of masks and PPEs, sharing of information online, setting up platforms for psychological support for overseas Chinese. So the response from Chinese non-governmental organizations to this international crisis has been unprecedented and is seen as another milestone of Chinese NGOs' globalization process. So in summary, there's very important and growing roles by Chinese corporations and NGOs in the international fight against COVID-19, and I think in the long-term growth and prosperity of regions around the world. This needs to, definitely needs to continue, but there are tremendous challenges, both domestically, in terms of the legal framework for Chinese NGOs to work internationally, their interaction and coordination with the government, the domestic sentiment among Chinese public, on these efforts, and also internationally challenges, including how these efforts are being perceived and can best meet local partner country community needs. So this is my intervention for the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Ji. Yes, excellent point. I think you have brought a very unique perspective on the NGO and also on the foundation's role in civil society's efforts in fighting the COVID-19. I think this probably shares some new light to the future. You know, for all those countries, we need to mobilize the civil society and the NGO sectors to really get more active, and also business community like foundation. So this is very unique perspective. As a matter of fact, I was just on another webinar on the AmCham just a few days ago, and I heard U.S. Ambassador Bernstein said AmCham members actually donated 70 million to China when China outbreak in the first place. So same is true. I mean, when Jack Ma and all the other Chinese organizations donated millions to the outside as well. We actually, CCG is conducting a joint research with Chinese People's Friendship Association on how the civil society of both China and the US have worked together on combined COVID-19, and we release that report very soon. So this is really good point. Now I'd like to invite our friend Emmanuel Pastrurich from US. He's the president of Asia Institute, and so I'm glad that you're probably very early now, and now it's your turn to speak, please. Open your microphone. You have to switch on your microphone. Yes. Your microphone. Yes. Unlock your microphone. Okay. Yeah.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Can you speak a little louder? Yes.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, a little louder, please.
You can hear me.
We can hear you. Yeah, you have to speak a little louder. Yes.
I will just make a few brief remarks from a slightly different perspective. The COVID-19 crisis in its political, economic, cultural, and ideological sense is more beyond anything, I think, in our lifetimes. In some ways, it's on a scale, it comes every 100 years. And I think we have to start with the assumption that we're not going to simply return to the economic we had before, and that we're going to have to rethink basically everything going forward. It's neither desirable nor is it possible to return to the growth, development, consumption model that we have pursued. And I think it's particularly important in this respect that we're talking here in China, because in many ways the economic model that we've used since the Opium War, based on the British Empire and then by expansion, has been on consumption and global trade. But in fact, the model for economic development before that, the model really in the 18th century was China, going back actually all the way to the Song, which was an agriculture-based, stable, environmentally sustainable system. And equally important, the concept of economics in the Chinese sense, 经济, comes from the original term, 经济经营, which means to run the nation and to help or to help the people. I.e., economics is by its nature a moral pursuit. It's a division of moral philosophy, and any approach to economics which is based just upon statistics or profits or consumption is not economics and is not appropriate. And I would say in that respect, from my perspective, my personal one, and I think it represents certain groups like myself and Asian Institute, that what we really need to do is to come back not to globalism and globalization, but rather internationalism as it existed at the founding of the United Nations and the World Bank, which was based upon collaboration between the citizens and between governments as representative organizations, and which finance itself was a highly regulated, carefully controlled field, which was not supposed to be about profits, certainly not about calculations by supercomputers, and that the ultimate goal should be a sustainable world for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emmanuel. And the sound is not that loud enough, but we roughly get your ideas. I think that you have also made your point, and you know, also international collaboration and also country-specific situation. We all need to really work together and also trying to make up the differences. You know, that's probably also very important. And now we would like to have Anusha Prasad. So she's the founding director, China Indian Foundation. So your turn, please.
Thank you so much, President Wang. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, your sound is very good.
Great, perfect. So I know that today we're all supposed to speak about COVID-19 from the perspective of our respective countries. But what I've found to be the biggest crisis in this pandemic across the world is a crisis in leadership. And today. So I believe that any international response to COVID-19 really has to begin with our approach and values around leadership. And I believe today what we ignore the most is humility in leadership. Humility allows us to recognize and accept that just like people, states also cannot meet their needs on their own. Our food supplies, our medical supplies, our climate are all connected. And hopefully COVID-19 is a reminder that even if we want to look inwards and isolate, the natural world doesn't heed these boundaries. COVID-19 is the weakest link problem. Even if I manage to protect myself from the virus, or country X manages to protect themselves, we will still find ourselves vulnerable if others have not managed to control this virus. We are only as strong and as safe as our weakest link. And we all must work together to ensure that the weakest in our global community are safe. Humility in leadership also allows us to recognize others' strengths and our own weaknesses, and be willing to admit and learn from both. For example, while many developed countries have struggled to control the virus, Vietnam has stood out instead as a beacon of how to do more with less. Vietnam example is much more relevant for a country where I come from, like India. Unlike wealthier countries, Vietnam isn't in a position to conduct mass testing programs. There are only about 8 doctors to every 10,000. In comparison, Italy and Spain both have about 41 doctors to 10,000. However, to this date, Vietnam hasn't suffered a single fatality. And I think more countries should be asking, how did they do this and what can we learn? So what does humility and leadership mean in practice? We need a recommitment to multilateral institutions and to adapting these institutions to the 21st century. The world has changed, technology has progressed, countries have pulled millions out of poverty and are rising. This is what the multilateral institution system was designed to do. And the United States, which has led this rules-based system, should be really proud of what humanity has achieved. And instead of potentially feeling threatened by the rise of others, the US should continue its leadership, should make room for others, and look to adapt the system for the challenges that we're facing today. Preserving world health, tackling inequality, climate change, technology norms, all of these will require effective cooperation. Humble leadership, I believe, can acknowledge this and begin this century's work. We need countries to pledge to not impose export restrictions on key pandemic-related commodities, such as medicines or medicinal equipment. Just as grain embargoes aggravate food scarcities, export restrictions interfere with access to life-saving equipment. And this holds true when the vaccine is produced as well. The powerful must recognize that their biggest soft power tool is magnanimity. Take care of the weakest link, and we shouldn't create further weak links. Lastly, I believe that leaders need to seek solutions no matter where they come from. Resourcefulness, innovation, and efficiency are not the sole domain of the developed world. Take Vietnam as an example. Take the Indian state of Kerala. We tend to look to only a few countries for solutions, but we should be humble enough to learn from anyone or everyone if they're doing it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Shrikant. I think you have also made a very good point that, you know, during the crisis, we need the humanity. We need really the leadership. I mean, that's really true. I think particularly for the global leadership on multilateralism in fighting this COVID-19 together. You know, every country probably has its own advantage, and we really need international leadership to really grasp all the advantages that we can have from different countries and formulate the global approach towards the COVID-19. So you have made a very good point that that multilateralism and global leadership, no matter what background they come from, they should all contribute to more effective, efficient, and you know, approaches to combat COVID-19. Thank you for your contribution to this. You know, we have actually, we still have some questions coming up, and appreciate your statement as well. Now I would like to go to another lady, that Hannah Ryder. She's a CEO development reimagined from African. So we have a really good perspective from all the continents and all the countries. So Hannah, your turn, please.
Thank you, President Wang, and CCG, CAS, and other partners who are organizing this, for the invitation to be here today. I hope everybody can hear me okay.
Yeah, fine, very good. Okay.
Well, I want to make 4 points today from an African perspective. My firm is a Kenyan firm. We're also based in China, but we take a cross-continental perspective. And so today I want to provide my remarks on that basis. The first point is that for Africa as a whole, a continent of 55 countries, there is no single story. Yes, 69% of the African countries acted before they had 10 cases, which means that many have been able to control the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, better than the rest of the world. They have together put $44 billion aside to tackle the crisis. That's equivalent to 1% of GDP on average. And countries such as Mauritius, Eritrea, Seychelles have declared COVID-free already. But there are others who are really suffering. Countries such as Egypt, where they had the first case on the continent, South Africa, Nigeria, a number of larger countries are having the greatest challenges in managing the crisis. So there is no one single story. I want to tell you today, there is success and there's also still continuing challenges. The second point is, for Africa, this is not just a health crisis. It was an economic crisis even before the first case arrived on the 14th of February. That's because the rest of the global economy was shutting down, including links to China, including links to the US and Europe. And for that reason, some of the key industries, tourism, those are not suffering because of shutdown. They're suffering because they have to close due to the links of the rest of the world, not because of what their governments are doing to try to deal with COVID-19. The prices on the shelves are going up because of lower global trade. Flower farms are closing, textiles farms are closing or having to repurpose because of low demand from importers, as well as to try to find solutions. So fundamentally, the issues and the solutions for African countries need to be both economic-based and also health-based. The third point is that the world response so far has been to some degree helpful, but it's definitely not enough. African economies account for the majority of poor people in the world. They account for the majority of low-income countries and least developed countries in the world. So far, that 44 billion that I talked about before, about a third of that has been able to be gathered from international support, and more is obviously coming, including from Europe in particular. But the majority of the support has also been very health-oriented, not necessarily dealing with some of the economic challenges that countries are facing. So, and where there have been economic challenges and where there have been economic support provided, for example, the G20 debt servicing initiative, and also further extra credit from the IMF, many of these are very short term. IMF loans tend to be 3 to 5 years repayment required for these extra finance. And for the G20 debt servicing initiative, some of these countries are really in a very, very difficult position, because if they take the debt servicing support, they may be putting themselves into a position where they cannot get access to more finance from other partners. So they are in a real conundrum, and so there's a real case for much more support to African nations, and especially the poorest. So what's needed? In general, I want to leave you with 2 key points on what's needed. A reimagining of Africa's place in the international order, and also a reimagining of the support that's provided to African countries. With regards to Africa's place in the international order, the key challenge is so far African countries have been very dependent on the rest of the international community to grow and to work. This is why they are so exposed right now. Yet, they are a great investment destination. We've heard the IMF and World Bank very doom and gloom reports about COVID-19. That is correct. But where will growth be over the next year or so? 8 of the 10 fastest growing countries in the post-COVID-19 world will be in Africa. It is the place for any growth, the place for any investment, if that investment is to happen. And that means investing into diversifying supply chains, working with China and others to create a better future for African nations. In terms of the support provided, we have definitely much more coordination is needed. There's not much coordination going on right now, but even bigger challenge is making sure that the support is provided based on African needs and based on African ideas. I've recently provided a proposal which aims to help not just African countries, but also low-income countries come together to get more debt and to deal with their debt servicing challenges. The idea of a borrower's club. These sorts of ideas, these sorts of actions, radical actions in some cases, are really required now. The time is now for action and ideas. Thank you very much, President Wang.
Yeah, thank you, Hanana. So really, very good points again, from African perspective, and I think African is uniquely situated. We hope that things are not out of control. I mean, looks still relatively well controlled. So we really think that the methodology and also the things that you mentioned are relevant, and also we need to really strengthen the international cooperation, to really fighting together. And I noticed that President Xi actually recently mentioned that for the developing countries, also China has pledged $2 billion in fighting the COVID-19 for African countries in supporting the World Health System, but also China is trying to forego some of the interest for some countries, developing countries, in relation to combat COVID-19. So I think there's many things that we could work together, and thank you for your good comments. Now we'd like to have a friend from Francisco Trigo. He's the Vice Provost for International Affairs, National Autonomous University of Mexico. So we have friends from South America. So Francisco, your turn, please.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the National University of Mexico, I am pleased to participate in this global think tank online forum on international cooperation to combat COVID-19. Thank you very much to CCG and President Wang. We welcome the organization of this forum because it is a proof that the pandemic has not diminished our spirit to continue the international dialogue and collaboration among scientific research institutions, governmental agencies, and universities. It is precisely in times of crisis when it is most required to build spaces for reflection, analysis, and research, and to generate knowledge and innovative solutions to the problems that our global and interconnected world is facing. As you already know, America is now the continent of lot of activity, particularly from the United States down to Brazil is a hot spot. Mexico, I think we have sound of mixed here. We need people to turn off the microphone. Yes, as you know, America is now a hot spot for the coronavirus pandemic. In the case of Mexico, we have 110,000 cases, 13,000 casualties, 70% bed occupation in hospitals, and a forecast not very promising of a drop down to -7% of our GNP. Since the end of January, 1 month before the first case of COVID-19 was detected in Mexico, the National University of Mexico has been playing a fundamental role in our nation. We have been developing many research projects carried out by different schools in terms of prevention, healthcare, advice to government institutions, biomedical research, and so on. All of this with emphasis on modeling of the dynamics of the pandemic and guiding the truthful and timely social aspects of our health in these extraordinary times. We've also been collaborating with the international community, particularly in Latin America, to share experiences and scientific knowledge in order to tackle the global challenges facing mankind. At the National University of Mexico, we are in favor of any initiative that promotes solidarity, social equality, and the development of people's capacities, regardless of any political divisions. We advocate breaking down any wall that is an obstacle to the free circulation of ideas and cooperation among our societies. We consider important to organize different international meetings with different organizations, public and private, and universities to share knowledge about scientific developments in new coronavirus research and prospects for finding effective vaccines and therapies. We also need to organize a seminar or seminars to analyze the challenges of higher education institutions to continue with their internationalization process and share experiences with online education processes in post-pandemic times. As you may know, many universities will be hurt economically as a result of this pandemic, since their income to operate will be highly reduced, either public or private universities, and a drop of students is expected in many countries. Today, more than ever, we need to build bridges that allow us to understand and face the pandemic together, that which knows no borders or nationalism. As the motto of this forum expresses, let us build a global community and a shared future. Thank you. Your microphone.
Yeah, thank you for your excellent points, and I think that's really great. Coverage of some of the points. I think that you're right. Virus knows no borders, and we shouldn't build walls among us. We should really accelerate the collaboration among the countries, and also we hope that all the universities and business and also connections can resume as much as we can through the international joint efforts, and then that we can really combat this COVID-19 in a successful way. So thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to invite Town Sri Michael Ye, who is also a friend of us. He's the president of Kingsley Advisory and Strategic Initiative, and also president of Kingsley Strategic Institute based in Malaysia. So it's your turn, Michael.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry Wang, and congratulations to you and CCG again for another very timely webinar. You've done a great job in bringing people together from many countries to share their thoughts and ideas. I think right now, global cooperation is more urgently needed today than ever before. The world has never seen such a pandemic before, and hence international cooperation is very essential, and multilateralism must be strengthened, and multilateral institutions must be supported in a much stronger way than ever before. This crisis is about health and economy, it's about life and livelihood. I believe that Asia is perhaps central to the economic recovery of the world, and it will also be the center for new opportunities for the world. We need to have more exchanges of ideas, information, experiences, and knowledge, so that the sharing of knowledge and experiences can benefit all of humanities. Many countries are now in a recovery phase, and hence the way forward should be focusing on an exit strategy on a national economic recovery plan for countries, as well as a global recovery strategy for the rest of the world. I see that international cooperation in the areas of public health, security needs to be enhanced because many countries lack public health security. And public health security can focus on vaccine research, on reducing tariffs on health and medicine, as well as stockpiling on medicine, PPE, and other equipment that are necessary to face these and future pandemics. There is also a great need for food security and cyber security going forward. Many countries during the lockdown found that they did not have enough food and they are not self-sufficient in food. And we have seen the huge increase in e-commerce that has led to some cyber crimes and the need, therefore, for cybersecurity to be enhanced. Going forward, I think we will be looking at a lot of opportunities in digitalization, in online business, online or distance education, e-commerce, as well as telemedicine. These are areas that have seen strong growth over the last 3-4 months and will continue to be our future growth drivers. The ASEAN countries, the 10 countries of Southeast Asia, has last month established an ASEAN Response Fund to overcome the COVID pandemic. I would like to suggest that this COVID Response Fund be enlarged to cover ASEAN plus 6, the other 6 partners of ASEAN. And that, I think, would be the key to the recovery of East Asia. Furthermore, the ASEAN plus 6 countries should expand the regional bilateral currency swap arrangements that are currently in place and perhaps develop an international or a regional financial safety net that will enable countries to continue trading and funding infrastructure development through currency swaps and not just be entirely dependent on the US dollars. Leaders of East Asia, I believe, should take the initiative and bite the bullet to conclude and sign the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, at the upcoming Summit of East Asian Leaders in Hanoi in November this year. We need to build trust and confidence going forward so that globalization can be embraced and supported by everyone, and people will not fear globalization. In this regard, perhaps we can think about establishing a regional or an international task force of experts from the government, from business sector, from healthcare, from technology, from education, to work towards getting a new global agenda and develop a new hope for mankind. So thank you, Dr. Wang.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for your comments as well. I think that we have really great ideas from all of you. I think, Michael, you mentioned about how the ASEAN actually is taking off, and how this regional collaboration is also important. And of course, you talk about multilateralism, that we should really continue that even for the regional multilateralism as well. So those are absolutely important, and we hope that RCEP can be concluded by the end of the year. We also hope that CPTPP expanding and China can be part of that as well. So those are very good points that you made. So we're actually quite good. We are actually, the first round we have actually concluded pretty much on time. And now we have some questions from our media and our think tank scholars here at this conference. We have the questions from, for example, I would like to go through some of those questions, and then we would like to have you maybe see which question you want to address, 1 or 2 minutes maximum to talk about those things. We have, for example, the question from China Daily. We have Zhang Zihao from China Daily asking, the WHO has reiterated on multiple occasions that global efforts against COVID-19 requires solidarity and international cooperation. But also we see some fragmenting forces in play. Even wants to withdraw from international organization. And also even other countries are starting to contemplating the same course of action. So what do you think? What about this multilateral support system? Actually, we already talked about that, but specifically to WHO. So what can WHO do, or its member countries to hold the global solidarity together against COVID-19, and maybe also what role China can play in this international organization? So, and to really contribute to this international solidarity. So this is one question from, actually 2 questions from China Daily. And we have another one from Li Feng from People's Daily, so 2 very influential papers in China. And so after arduous efforts, China finally controlled the spread of a pandemic. So what do you think? What China can continue to do to help first in the national arena, and also how really you think about the way of China trying to fighting forward on those pandemic, and also asking about China is now in most difficult time. When China is in most difficult time, many countries giving strong support to China. Now the world is under threat of epidemic. China is also actively helping other countries to fight against the virus. So how do you see that those international cooperation be continued and be enhanced? So those are the questions from People's Daily, actually. And also, there's also one question from our senior fellow, Dr. Tan from CCG. And one of the questions she's asking is that we are actually doing the post-pandemic, the globalization trend for the post-pandemic. So what do you think about the paradigm shift or anything that's greatly changing or anything that we can really do better after the post-pandemic crisis. We're still in the crisis, but hopefully we can get it through in some time. And so what do you think of the actions that we can taken, or we can really, what are the trends and development in the post-pandemic world? So those are the questions, we have about, those different questions. So maybe we'll have 1 or 2 minutes from you, and then as a concluding remark, but also as, if you can, addressing some of those questions. Why don't we start with Michela again, our Italian friend. You've been really patient to hear all the way. Yeah, you have to open your microphone.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Challenges to globalization, my view, and it's just a conjecture for the time being, is that there will be a little bit of an opening up with a less globalization in certain sectors, what I call it hardware and people. Of course, tourism, airline is never going to be like it used to be. I have no illusions about that. And that has created also a change of behavior in people. It's not going to be so easy that people get on a plane to go on a weekend somewhere on the seaside. It will take time. But I see an increase in the digitalization of services online and remote diagnosis. So I see an opening up. Some sectors will go down. And so if we only observe those, the traditional ones, we would say globalization will go down. But if we look at the new trends, the new services, actually there will be a push up. And this is actually like a bit of an earthquake that will also shift the relative powers of countries. Those who are ahead in IT, artificial intelligence, so on, I think will do better. Those that rely more on those old services will, for example, I'm thinking Greece, that has a lot of inbound tourism. They need to refix their own economic models. I even seen safaris online. Personally, if I go to Serengeti, I want to be there. I don't want to watch it online. It's not tourism. It's what I used to do watching Discovery Channel, which is perfectly okay, but it's another product. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michela. So good point. Yeah, I think that we probably need to look at many things that in the post-pandemic era that certainly there's many things we need to be prepared for. Yeah, you're right. Maybe we just, according to this speak order again, we have Ulrich Baum. Your final feedback or questions on the topic.
Thank you so much. I think to answer the questions from the newspapers, I think if we go to complexity theory, we know that if we take out a critical node, the small world may collapse. And I think we must think of the World Health Network as a system as important as the World Trade Network. And I think we may have to enforce more competences and more independence and more engagements of WHO. I think that is a possibility. The second thing is, I think that is very Chinese, but also very German. That is values matter. We had Max Weber who discussed the issue of values for the capitalist revolution. We know that trust is extremely important, and that relates to Confucian tradition. And in my opinion, if I look especially to the contributions from Asia and from Africa, and perhaps be a little bit critical to United States, we should be more value-oriented and include the values of the people at place into our considerations, how we organize the combat of COVID-19 or any other pandemia, because as we say in football, translated, after the pandemia, we are before the next pandemia. There's one to come for sure. And the last point is, I think, what I mentioned to you, Mr. President, do we have to realize that it may be difficult to digitally organize trust? In a world where everything now goes via video conferences, we may run into trouble organizing the trust that we have if we have a good lunch or a good dinner together, have a good sip of wine, go to the opera. We cannot reduce that to video conferences. And I think that will be the challenges for the future. And that is the challenge to leadership. Because if leaders don't have a sip of wine or a sip of Mao Tai or something like that, I think they will fail in the long run. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown. That's right. I think you mentioned this World Health Community, World Health global governance should be strengthened, and also we have competent and more high qualified professionals running the institution. So that's right. We need more support, more budget, and more strengthening of that, which particularly for this kind of global crisis. And also I think you're right that the value does play a very important role, especially among different cultures, that we should take that into consideration. Now I would like to invite Mr. Yuya Hasegawa to have your final word, please.
Yeah, thank you, President. Yeah, as for the third question on the post-corona situation, you know, it's really important to build a trust, as I mentioned. Maybe the online communication had sometimes a big trouble. I mean, for example, you know, maybe you might have some experience of the traveling on the email or some TV conference. We cannot sense the perfect understanding from the online. But so in order to have you know, the smooth communication, we have to have the trust on daily basis. Otherwise, you know, we easily have a misunderstanding. So that's why, I mean, I'm pretty much interested in to know the few weeks ago, there was a news, the G7 summit meeting will be held in face-to-face meeting instead of online meeting. So maybe that symbolized the difficulty of the online communication. Of course, we have to overcome, we have to get used to that kind of situation. But you know, that kind of news symbolize the difficulty. So we have to think about how to overcome the new situation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your good points as well. I think that's really important to build the trust after pandemic. I think, you know, we are very surprised to see this pandemic, actually the crisis didn't bring us together, actually divided us sometimes. And actually even, you know, among the big countries. So it's how we can build trust, and only by virtual meetings is not enough, and we should have face-to-face meeting. As a matter of fact, even for China, US, I mean, the leaders hasn't met for probably over a year now, face-to-face. So that's, you know, I remember last G20 in Japan in May or something. It's already May or June, it's already a year ago. So we really need high-level face-to-face meetings. That's right, and for the global leadership to really, you know, regain the trust and at least understanding of each other position. So this is really a good point. So now we can have is Madame Ji, maybe from Asian Foundation. Your final word and comment, please.
Thank you. I think there was a very good question on how China could continue to help in the post-COVID world. And I think definitely China should continue to help. This is you know, China being a very important, responsible international player. But in playing this role, indeed, there cannot be enough emphasis on the role of the private sector and NGOs. For Chinese companies, you know, what they've done during the pandemic has been part of an effort to improve their image and perception in countries where they make investment. But you know, for the longer term, they would still need to have very close community consultations and engagement strategies, and so that their investment in countries around the world is bringing about shared prosperity, including prosperity to the local communities. For Chinese NGOs, this has been a huge effort, and they've learned a lot from the fight against the pandemic internationally. But they still face tremendous challenges. There's not a lot of funding that they can draw upon. There's actually no money from the Chinese aid money that is being channeled to Chinese NGOs. So some institutional arrangement needs to be made. There's also a lack of legal framework on issues related to shipment of goods, transfer of money overseas, customs clearance. So legal framework needs to be strengthened as well. There's also weak professional capacity among Chinese NGOs, and organizations and partners like the Asia Foundation are helping to strengthen that capacity. And lastly, there's also, a tremendous amount of pressure from the general public in China. The Alibaba Foundation and Jack Ma Foundation, they actually faced questions from Chinese netizens about using money to donate to other countries. The two foundations released official statements saying that they don't fundraise from the Chinese general public, but this is just one of the many instances when Chinese philanthropic organizations are questioned on why they're doing international philanthropy and where they get the money to do it. So there's a great need for transparency and also a great need for raising public awareness among the Chinese general public on the importance of people-to-people exchanges and for important people-to-people cooperation. Thank you.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, thank you, Madam Ji. I think you have raised also excellent point. Even during the current or even post-pandemic, how we can really mobilize the NGOs and civil societies to respond to the not only domestic crisis but internationally, how the procedures, legal framework, and all the facilitation should really be transparent and also established to facilitate that. So, and also public awareness and education is also important. You raised all those good points. Thank you for that. Now we want to have Anushka Prasad. Your turn, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one thing I'd like to emphasize is that international cooperation has created massive gains in peace and prosperity for humanity, but these gains aren't often communicated effectively to your common citizen. It's very difficult for domestic populations to recognize the impact that multilateralism has had on their lives. And so I do think that post-pandemic, or even beginning now, and this is a very difficult thing to do, we have to start to think about how to talk about cooperation internationally to a domestic population, so that they recognize the benefits that they get from it. Because a lot of our leaders are playing to domestic populations. And so as a result, multilateralism comes second, international cooperation comes second. I think that's point number one. Point number two is that COVID-19 has obviously highlighted the huge system level risk that we have in our healthcare systems and in cooperation in healthcare. But I think it's a precursor to recognizing how much of an impact climate change will have. And so post this pandemic, the biggest risk that we face is climate change. And I think, now that we've experienced on a day-to-day level what some of the impact of climate change could feel like. For example, in some countries, at some point, it might be too hot to go outside. And so you will be locked in your homes for months, till it gets cooler. Our food supply chains might be disrupted eventually. And so, people can now recognize what that would feel like because they go to the grocery store and sometimes their favorite, sometimes toilet paper isn't there, sometimes meat isn't there. So I think we need to use COVID-19 as a way to really talk to domestic populations about how we need to work together on health and how we really need to work together on climate change eventually. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashika. Good points too. And you talk about, how we can really fight this together. And also you particularly talk about the food safety on that as well, the value chain. And actually, CCG just conducted a webinar on food crisis and food security during the pandemic crisis, and we actually already paid attention on that. It's a really good point. And also we need to really address multilateral efforts to do that. And now I'd like to have Hanaya Ryder to have your comments as a final word as well. Yeah, please.
Thank you. Yes. So I'll build on some of, especially some of the points that Anushka made, and also G as well. In terms of the WHO solidarity question, you know, WHO has been really trying to say the world needs to come together for solidarity. When you come to African countries, the institution that they have really, really relied on is the Africa CDC. Not so much the WHO, but much more the Africa Center for Disease Control. Many African countries were using masks, saying that those were mandatory before the WHO changed their advice. There's a real question as to, is the multilateral system actually working for the poorest countries? This is a huge question which I think we are not yet answering and not yet ready to answer. On top of that, I think there's a big question as to whether globalization itself is working for the poorest countries. They were sheltered to some degree because COVID-19 got to them later. So they had the experience to learn from everybody else. But on the other hand, that also exposed that they are so far away from the rest of the international community, and the challenges that they have are much more to do with the exposure to elites and so on. There's so much to discuss here. So if there's anything positive, I think that can come out of this is a questioning and a rethinking of the multilateral system, how to make it work better. And I think, as Anushka was saying at the beginning, we need to look at the international order was created for a particular need in a particular time. We have a completely different set of challenges now, completely different set. So let us be open to looking at that. I also think, and I'll finish on this, the key words we should be thinking about, definitely humility in leadership, definitely trust, but also respect. We must also have respect in the international system for different voices and for what seem to be the least important voices. Let them come to the fore, and we will be able to find solutions if we do that. And I want to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, and yeah, I think we really need not only you know, on the global, international level, but also regional level too. I think both you know, public health governance system are really needed, and also for countries like in Africa, but also in Asia and many other countries. So it's really important to have local strong governance as well. Now we have Francisco Trigo. Your final comments and questions as well.
Yes, thank you, President Wang. I will just make 2 quick comments. One, there has been since some years ago the concept of One Health. This states that human health, animal health, and environmental health are all close interlinked. And this coronavirus pandemic has proven that correctly. And the idea that governments have not paid much attention in strengthening the collaboration between medicine doctors, veterinarians, public health officials, nurses, and so on. So that's an eye-opener to put more attention in the future and to establish closer links internationally and in each country for that respect. The other point I want to make is that the higher education, well, education as a whole, and particularly higher education, most likely will change. If we look back some months ago, we had to move quickly from the traditional classroom teaching to quickly in a few weeks, to change to online teaching. That was possible because we had the technology worldwide, although there are certainly differences among countries, but a huge change had to be done. Now the question is, what will happen for this coming fall semester worldwide? I mean, in the Northern Hemisphere, what will happen for this fall semester? And most likely the agreement is that we'll not go back to the traditional way of teaching. Most likely we'll develop a blended type of education, giving online the basic informative courses and leave more to close contact, all the practical courses where abilities have to be developed. I think the pandemic has and will influence the way education will go around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. I think that you're right. I mean, I particularly like your comment on the, we really need about the human health, animal health, and environmental health. I think it's absolutely right. I mean, environmentally, I think the world is really getting so deteriorated now. This climate change is if the world is not paying attention to that, that's affecting us. I mean, this COVID-19 could be the punishment to the humanity, to the mankind, because of the environmental deterioration that we are not carefully safeguard that. So we really, it's connected. Environmental health, climate change, animal health, and human health, it's all intertwined. So probably that's a really great point, that we really need to work together on the climate change so that we don't have any future surprises like this one ahead of us. Absolutely correct. Now we want to have Michael, Sir Michael Ye have the final word, please.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. I just have three very quick points. One on your question of the WHO. I think WHO is so essential for the whole world. I think it's so essential for all of mankind. We need WHO, we need more cooperation internationally to enhance, to do research, to share experiences, to further improve healthcare for all countries and all communities. So WHO is important, it has to be supported. Maybe China can play a bigger role in giving more support to WHO. My second point is, we need to move globalization to one that is compassionate globalization and not just unfettered globalization that only benefits the rich and powerful. The smaller countries, smaller businesses must also be able to learn about globalization and to share the benefits of globalization, including workers. We have to ensure the gender balance, and many of these issues needs to be addressed in globalization. My third and final point is, this global pandemic has totally changed the world of work, the future of work. That today we can work remotely and we can do work in, say, in one country, but delivering services in another country. So you don't have to be, say, in America, but you can do work for American organizations. Similarly, an African can deliver very good work and outcomes through online conversations like this with another person in many other countries. So the world of work will be changed totally, and we have to get used to working remotely. And these are some of the future challenges we need to address. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for your excellent point as well. So this indeed, this pandemic has changed us forever. I mean, the way we communicate, the way Michael, you still have want to speak something? We have actually another question from CCTV. Was asking, how will globalization and international cooperation help different countries, ranging from developed countries and less developed countries, recover from pandemics, especially in the economic area? I mean, I saw Michael raise your hand. You want to also address this one as well? Michela, yeah, from Italy, yeah. You have to open your speaker.
Sorry. I think if we are looking at developing countries, and I was looking at Africa, for example, manufacturing, energy, so sectors that do not require indoor activities may actually have a relative gain. And so in a way, this is what some of the developing countries need. railway constructions. As a reference, I was working on some activities in India, for example, on the Delhi-Jaipur railway that was done by Italian companies, and some of the food parks. And these are activities that outdoor may actually help some countries that need some investment in infrastructure to raise. Now, and this is another like earthquake shift that I see, while office inside the building, that may be a little bit more difficult. I'll leave it to Ulrich. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Ulrich, you want to have some word?
Yes. I think we must be very careful not to run into what we have historically called the Malthusian trap. And the Malthusian trap this time will not be demography, but it will be artificial intelligence. And if you take China as an example, you have about 400 to 500 million people that live like in Europe. And then you have your migrant workers and your peasant population. Peasant population in China is some 350 million people. If you had European agricultural standards, you would need 10% of that. And now you have to put them into work in a world where artificial intelligence and three-dimension manufacturing, etc., roll over the industrial sector. And I think this will be a huge challenge, that we qualify populations fast enough not to have them run into this Malthusian trap. And I think in China, President Xi Jinping has very well recognized that it's a fight sort of survival. And I think will be the same type of fight for survival. It's already there in the United States. It is less in Germany because we have a very, very solid dual apprenticeship system, but we will have it in other countries. And I think this will be the phase 2 challenge that we have to meet. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ulrich. And you mentioned this artificial intelligence, and also the challenge China will face in, when they have such a growing middle class, and they have to really cope with this automation and artificial intelligence. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's another challenge is facing. So I think probably we have come to the end of today's webinar, and we are really very much appreciate all of you participating. This is actually probably one of the largest global think tank online conference that ever conducted. This global think tank online forum on international cooperation to combat COVID-19, and the Center for China Globalization is hosting this one of the forum called the Global Cooperation to Fight COVID-19 Challenges and Opportunities. I think we had an excellent contribution from all of you, and we had really proposed many recommendations in terms of how to strengthen the international collaboration, how we can really improve the international governance on public health, how we can strengthen the WHO, and how we can really get the business community to work together, how we can get NGO and civil society to work together, how we can build up the trust, how we can really have the regional differences being also strengthening the collaboration among them. And also we talk about many things, and also great ideas. So I think we're going to, our staff and also our media friends probably will make a very good summary of all your good points. And so this will be publicized in China and internationally, and will be very, very helpful. And also particularly, we're going to also summarize some of the policy implications, not only for the public, but also for the government as well. Those are really very useful and enlightening discussion that shows the think tank community, at least we are, have no problem communicating, and we have really, come up with a lot of good ideas and suggestions. So once again, I would like to thank, our distinguished panelists, Sir Daniel Alexander, Vice President and Corporate Secretary from Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. We have Ulrich Braun, Founding Director, Center for Economic of Materials from Germany. We have Lawrence Braun, Founding Director, Himalaya Consensus Institute from based in Nepal. And also we have actually Nicola Clucci, he's the foremost Undersecretary of State at the Italian Minister of Economics Development. And also we have Yuya Hasagawa, he's the Managing Director of Japan External Trade Organization, JETRO, based in Hong Kong. And we have Hongboji, country representative of China, the Asian Foundation, which is a US foundation. And also we have Emmanuel Patricia, he's the president of Asia's Institute based in the US. And we have Ashoka Prasad, the founding director of China-India Foundation based in India. And we have Hannah Ryder, he's a CEO, Development Reimagined from Africa. And we have Francisco Trico, Vice Provost for International Affairs, National Autonomous University of Mexico. And we have, last but not least, Tan Sira Michael Ye. He's the president of Kingsley Strategic Institute based in Malaysia. So we have all of you, and we had an excellent discussion. We had really enriched this, I think, the global debate and global discourse on this, how we can really fight together to contain the COVID-19, and also how we can recover better in the future area. You have raised so many good points. I want to, on behalf of CCG and organizers, thank you all very much. And we want to keep our dialogue, and we want to keep our communications, and we also welcome you to visit China, visit CCG in the future. So this is the end of our webinar, and I want to thank you all very much. So we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.